you're going to need to take care of yourself in order to access your creativity. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, right? This is a long game, and it's really important to have fun along the way.
That was Dr. Sarah Wooten, a veterinarian, a journalist, and a co-conspirator for a card game called Vets Against Insanity, which is now turning into an experience. Make sure you stay until the end to hear more about that. What I love about this conversation with Sarah is how she talks about finding her identity. She had to learn what it was not first, through fears, cyberbullying, and more. Once she learned where she did feel like herself and could thrive, she wanted to take others on a journey full of fun as well. Here is Dr. Wooten. When did you know you first wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
It's not like when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones.
Oh,
Definitely
nice.
wanted to be Indiana Jones. So when I got to college, my freshman year, we all tend to be planners and a little neurotic and perfectionistic in all our ways. And I was like, I got to figure it out right now. I'm either going to be an archaeologist, or maybe I'm going to write novels, or maybe I'm going to be a veterinarian, because when I was growing up, our veterinarian was basically God to me. I think I worshiped at his feet because I just thought he was so amazing, right? And so, of course, when you have that experience in your formative years, you're just like, well, yeah, of course, that's what I'm going to do. So I picked it my freshman year and been with it ever since.
Yep. I completely relate to the whole neurotic goal planning. So, yep, got that. So you went to UC Davis. So
Yeah.
you actually moved a little ways, right, for vet school?
Actually, I am Californian. I am from California originally. I went to undergrad on the East Coast and then came back to California.
So you can
And yeah, I went to Davis there. I was class of 2002.
How was vet school for you?
For the most part, it was great. I mean, I look back at my photos from those. I was just looking at some of them the other day, and I'm like, look at that little girl. She was having a really good time. But, however, saying that, it was really challenging. It was so much more challenging than any other academics I had done before then. And at Davis, when I was going through, they made winter quarter sophomore year the hardest of like all 4 years. And the idea was, if you can pass this, right? Because it was like repro and path at the same time, and you're learning all these new words and you're like, I don't even know. But if you could do this, then you can be a vet, right? During that quarter, I actually had my very first panic attack ever. And I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was having a heart attack, right? I'm just like this little kid. Turns out, no, it was just a panic attack. So yeah, that was pretty hard. You had built your identity upon high grades and academic achievement, because that's what I was good at, right? And then you spend your whole life like being smarter than everybody else, and then you go to vet school and everybody is as smart or smarter and more driven than you are, and then suddenly you're like in the middle and you're like, what is my identity actually built on? I don't even know. So that was really challenging, to kind of like deconstruct that part of myself and actually like be okay. Like I think I got a C my sophomore year in that same quarter in clinical pathology. It was like this little 1-unit class that was open book test.
Those are sometimes the hardest.
I know, right? And I was like so like happy to get A's in the other things that I saw the C, and I was like, well, whatever. And now I think about it, it doesn't matter at all, like at all. But back then it was a really big deal, right? It was pretty, for me, other than that, it was pretty straightforward. I do remember, however, when I was in my senior year, and there was a in heat Bernese mountain dog that came in for a spay, and it got assigned to me. And I don't know anything, right? I've been through one spay, a team of 3, and I'm just like, one of the ligatures slipped off of the spay pedicle. It was like bleeding, right? And I was like, I don't know what to do, right? And that felt like that was kind of a turning point for me as well, because I remember the surgeon, he kind of came over and he's like, well, what do you do? And I was like, I don't no, I'm the student. You have to show me. And so he was like, suction, assistance, all this stuff. And he like just went in there, was like, and cleaned it up in 2 seconds. And I was like, well, I don't know how much I actually learned from that, but thank you for fixing my problem. And then that led to some issues in my first couple of years as well, right out of vet school. And it's funny how this stuff kind of snowballs on itself, you know?
This is good. I really appreciate addressing our identity in vet school. This is a really common problem. And I've always thought about being concerned with where we put our identity on things like that, like a title or grades. And that can be really dangerous. So I'm really interested to hear more about how you wrestled with your identity and where you kind of were able to grow and feel comfortable in who you were going forward.
I feel like Lemony Snicket, because I think it was a series of unfortunate events that kind of forced me to grow. It was a bit of therapy for me to be able to uncover a lot of this stuff, because what I realized that I did once I had gotten out of vet school, kind of like joked, C equals DVM is like the things that you do to make yourself feel better. Then it switched to like my identity to be able to make the most money, be the highest producing doctor, get all the cases right. And that was literally exhausting. I didn't even know how much this like narrative I was telling myself was so exhausting to me, because when you're in it, you can't see it, right? You just think that's how it is. You don't even think about it hardly. You just go through the motions day in and day out. What happened after that was there was a couple of times, because right out of vet school, I was by myself a lot, as far as like a new grad. And I had a couple of surgeries that just terrified the bejesus out of me. Whoever's listening, I'm sure you've had your own stories, but like that really kind of compounded what started in vet school. And on some levels, it was like this low level anxiety disorder where I remember dread, like, oh, what's going to be on my surgery board when I get to work? And then it was, oh my gosh, I'm going to dread it on the way to work, and I'm going to mentally obsess about it. And then it was, I'm going to think about it the night before I go to work. And then it was Friday night, and I'm already thinking about Monday. Of course, what did I do? I avoided conflict. I was like, I'm not going to do any surgery anymore. That was my solution, right? It's just like put a Band-Aid on it. And then it was like, no, I got to get this figured out. So then I went and worked at a humane society for 18 months or something and just did their high volume spay neuter, literally flood therapy. And by the end of that, I realized that I didn't like surgery. That was part of the problem. I could do it. I could go in there and not be scared anymore, but it just wasn't very fun to me. And then I realized that there was like this whole other part of me that kind of just wanted to come out. And that was the idea of doing some teaching within the veterinary world, doing some speaking, doing some writing, doing some media work, all these other pieces of me that I had kind of just dropped along the way. And so that's where the whole me moving into and working for DVM 360, that's where that kind of came out of. I had approached them back in 2014, and they were at the AVMA convention in Denver at that time, and I live in Colorado. And I remember I had just met Marty Becker, and I had had such a schoolgirl crush on him, like my whole vet career. I was like, oh, he's my mentor. I want to be Marty Becker, right? That was me. And so I'd met him, and I feel so full. And I'd walk by the DVM 360 booth, and I remember turning around and marching straight up to them, which was very out of character for me at the time, by the way. I was very, very mousy little girl, right? I really was. Zero confidence. Zero. And I was like, you need to hire me. And they were like, oh, tell us why. And I went, these are the reasons. And lo and behold, they did. So I kind of just kept stepping down my practice over the year as far as like private practice, and then kind of moved into more of the writing. I thought, oh, I'm cured. I don't have panic or problems with my confidence or anything like that anymore. And then I was asked to write an article on this documentary called Pet Fooled. It was on Netflix for a while. And I was asked to just say, hey, some of your pet parents will watch this and they might have some questions. Here are the ways to address those questions, right? So I interviewed Joe Barges, who's, he's a nutritionist out of Georgia. Is that where he is now?
Yes,
But
CGA.
okay, perfect. And he just gave me his answers and I wrote them down and it was great. And then the website, The Truth About Pet Food, got a hold of it. And then all of these haters came out of the woodwork and went to my website, went to my Facebook page, and just started absolutely spewing the worst, hateful, are you even human kind of stuff. And I actually wrote these down for you. You're nothing but an ignorant, uninformed charlatan. Dear doctor, perhaps your time would be better served peddling the little bags of death nuggets you sold out to. That's
Death
so
nuggets.
mean. Death nuggets, right? Here's another one. You are a shill and should be ashamed of your ignorance, right? Shame, 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 like the shame bell from Game of Thrones, right? Okay, here's another one. Shame on you, Dr. Wooten, Dr. Sarah Wooten. You are now part of the system that guilts pet owners into paying way too much of their hard-earned money for your cheaply made garbage diets that only create more health issues so you can cash in on their sick dogs. Shame on you, right? I was like,
wow.
and it just went on and on and on. And I'll tell you what, like all of the anxiety that I thought I had cured from surgery or bad grades came rushing back, like right back at me. I think I cried for 45 minutes after that happened. It honestly, Megan, I cannot tell you anything other than going through it, getting out on the other side, understanding that every other human has a different opinion of you, every single one, and only one of them should count, and that's yours. Doing so much inner work and learning to rewrite my narratives and then understanding what my identity had been built upon. First, it was great student, then it was great surgeon, and then it was great writer, right? And none of those are actually me. Honestly, I have gone to the school of hard knocks when it comes to this stuff, and it was only by starting to understand that I actually don't have to feel that bad about other people's opinions, even when they're negative, and understand that it's just an opinion, right? And what really helped me, because we're all scientists here, is understanding the neurobiology of what's going on. Somebody said we're cave people with TVs, right? And I thought that was hilarious, especially if you think about the part of the brain that runs this kind of fight, flight, or freeze response. It's it's our old primal part of our brain. It's our amygdala. It's our limbic system. It doesn't know the difference between thinking about something scary and actually being presented with it. It responds the same way. And mine was so overactive from all those years, plus some childhood trauma. We won't go into that. And it was like learning how to understand what's going on inside, and then learning how to calm myself, and then learning how to see those same things going on in other humans, like all those mean things that people were saying about me online. That's just them projecting their own insecurity. And that should be a reason to have compassion for them, not a reason to just judge them back. But when you're in it, when you're in the amygdala is running the show, you can't even access your higher cortical functioning. So it was kind of all of that, and just getting old enough to where I was like, I've seen this loop. This is the third time I've been on it. I'm not going to go around again. Yeah, that's kind of my story with that.
Yeah. Well, in I guess people call it cyberbullying. People get to kind of hide behind behind their computer. And I think they forget that there's a human being on the other side. I know not too long ago, there was this went all over social media about a hospital that got targeted. And they are not the only ones that get targeted with these comments from upset people. And so similarly, one thing that I've learned, especially, now having platforms on social, if someone says something that is less than positive, never respond right away. You always need to kind of think about it. Your initial reaction is not good. And that is a good thing about being in the virtual world is you do have that moment that you can take. You don't have to respond immediately. And sometimes running it by someone else is helpful as well. What other things have you learned? And do you kind of counsel veterinary clinics and veterinarians who definitely are not used to getting such attention in the virtual setting? And I think that'll just continue as we see the necessity of having some type of virtual presence.
Well, I think the good news is that people tend to pay more attention to good reviews. For example, if somebody's cyberbullying your organization or your practice, people tend to pay attention to the good things that are said about you more than the bad things. Even though we're, again, evolutionarily hardwired to focus on those things because they are a threat, right? They're a threat to our livelihood and our business and our status within the community. Other people don't quite see it that bad. And in fact, it can often help to just, if you are getting any kind of cyber attacks or anything like that, first of all, you block them, right? That's step one. You can reach out to them as a client off of the internet. Actually, a phone call often goes a really long way. We've had some angry clients in the past, and it turns out that there was just miscommunication, and you can often ask them to actually take down what they have said, especially in like the business arena. And then the other thing is you can just you can bury bad reviews with good reviews. The good news is like in social, I do feel like they're becoming more sensitive to actual cyber attacks, that you can actually flag those. Personally, you just have to understand that this person's opinion is mired in whatever emotion that they're experiencing at that moment. And they did not have the emotional or mental maturity or restraint to have a mindful conversation. So what they're doing is just projecting, right? And so that has very little value. The other thing that's really important to remember is that, again, doesn't define you or the way that you practice. We have opinions. We like to share them with each other, especially the past couple of years. We've all been so reactive, and there's a lot of division. And so I feel like it's really important for us to understand that it's not just that particular situation. There's a lot of other things that are playing into that. And like you said, to be mindful and practice the pause before you have a reaction to it. And the other thing is we often punish ourselves with feeling bad about it. I feel bad. And then it just kind of sticks there in our mind. So if you can even compartmentalize that, that's amazing, because the more space that you provide, the more perspectives and different ways that you can look at this particular situation, that's going to build different stories for you other than everybody hates me. I'm bad. I can't do a good job. And those are the stories that tend to come first, right? And so it's by practicing that pause, you can actually get to the more mindful responses. And so some of the ways that I always talk to veterinary audiences about is breath work. I love breath work. It's so powerful because it can actually take you so you can go from sympathetic overload, where your cortisol and your adrenaline and norepinephrine, all that's coursing, right? And then you have your parasympathetic, where you have your rest and digest hormones. And with something as simple as breath work, if you get good at it, you can actually take your nervous system out of sympathetic activation and put it back into parasympathetic, which is just fascinating to me. I was in my 40s by the time I learned that. I was like, where has this been my whole life? I walked into an exam room one time, and I knew it was going to be adventure because the technician came out of it and she was like, oh my gosh, this person is pissed. And I'm like, oh, fun. I'm excited. And it wasn't even my case. It was another case from another doctor that I got thrown on, because that's how this thing goes. And so I go in, I'm like, okay, I already know I'm going to start practicing my breathing before I even go into that room, because I know this person's going to project all over me. They're frustrated about something. I am the target, but I think I can weather this. So I go in and she's ranting. She feels injustice has happened and this is her story. And she's going to tell it to me. After she had just told the technician, she's going to tell it to me. So I started practicing box breathing, which is fascinating. It's not an easy technique. You have to practice it. And I would recommend practicing it before, like sitting down, because if you don't do it right, you can pass out. You inhale, you hold, and then you exhale, and then you hold. So you pause at the top and you pause at the bottom of the breath. And all of those, the breathing in, the breathing out, and the pauses are all for the same length of time. So you pick 2 or 4 or 3 or whatever. So you count in for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, you hold for 4. And you keep doing that over and over and over. And basically what that does is that sends a signal to your midbrain that the coast is clear. We can stop all the chemical cascades, no more cortisol, no more adrenaline. Then you have access up to your higher cortical functioning again. So I'm doing my box breathing and she's literally right here and she's yelling at my face. And I'm like, you know, and in my mind, I'm just thinking, breathing, breathing, breathing. I wish I would have had this when I was in surgery, because then I could have stayed out of panic during surgery. And she gets done with her stuff. And I'm like, that sounds like that's really hard. Is there anything else you'd like to share? And she goes, no. And I think she was really disappointed that I didn't join her in her drama, right? And then I was like, okay, well, this is what I heard. Then I practiced my reflective listening. And then she gets a little calmer, right? Because this is all about staying in charge emotionally and cognitively during these high stress situations that you know you're going to have. And so she kind of got all spent out. And we came to some sort of agreement. I don't even remember what it was. And I leave. And the technician's like, she's looking at me like, you are so good at that. How do you do that? And I'm like, experience, my young friend. I've been in this game a long time. The client was happy. I didn't get stressed out. I didn't take my stress from being projected on by this other human, and I didn't take it back to the treatment area, and I didn't spread it amongst the rest of the staff because I have to vent, because venting is just releasing the excess energy that feels too yucky to hold up in your body, right? I didn't do any of that. I took something that could have been really bad and really bad for me, but not other people in the practice, and just used something as simple as breath work and some mindfulness and was able to turn it around. That's something that I want to see for every veterinary professional, because who knows what we could do, right?
Be the superheroes we are. So exactly. And what I love after all of the challenges that you have gone through and that we've discussed so far, you now have embraced humor and you bring fun back to the profession. You conspired a game, co-conspired with Dr. Caitlin DeWild, who I also love and follow, a game called Vets Against Humanity, which turned into an LLC, and now it's becoming a conference. So I am very interested to hear the transition. How did that happen?
So we started it back in 2017, and we initially just created a couple little cards to use as a teaching tool to help people remember the things that we were teaching better in the classes that we were teaching at Fetch. I think it was definitely CVC back then. People just went nuts for the game, and they were like, "Can you make this into a bigger game?" And I was like, "Sure." And then PVM 360 was like, "Well, we want to publish it." And I was like, "Okay." And so they ended up publishing like the first one, a little black guy up there, which got us in a lot of trouble. But then we rebranded the game, just kept growing it. And it's funny because like the game now seems like a bit of a time capsule, because we've been making like new games every year. And you can really see the spiciness of the past couple of years in the new game. I was looking through it going, why did I make this? I'm a bad person.
Aw.
It's just designed to, people mostly buy it around staff Christmas party season is when our sales just goes crazy. They play it to laugh, right? They play it to connect. Some people are still using it as a teaching tool. I've seen people use it to teach the non-veterinary paraprofessionals, like their front staff and things like that, about medical terms. I thought that was interesting.
Nice.
And that was like the whole idea behind the game, was just to make it fun, right? Laugh together, laugh sometimes when you feel like you need to cry. And then last year, we just got this wild hair a little bit because we all went a little crazy over the past couple of years, and decided to keep the game, but also make it an experience, like an event. So the idea was to have this little regional conference and actually have people have genuine connections by the time they leave, right? Normally everybody comes in their gang, they stay in their gang, and then they leave and they have the same gang, right? The idea is to have a wider gang, to have more connections regionally, more friends and colleagues in the profession that you could call on to, talk to or get help. Better connections between our local reps for, all of our food, pharmaceuticals, all of that, and the local practices. And then just to have fun. One of my things is I always make my audience laugh, right? Because I know that when you laugh, you loosen up and things kind of flow better and you get better retention, you remember things, you have a better experience, you open up to new experiences. So I'm hoping to bring this conference and have it be just a really fun time. Yes, you're going to get continuing education, of course, but it's really about showing up. Our first one is October 21st through the 23rd of this year. It's coming up, and it's in Black Hawk, Colorado. And you show up Friday night, we play games together, we loosen up, we have some drinks, we just, connect. And then we show back up for our full day on Saturday. And you already see people that you could sit at any number of tables, right? Because here we are, we're all in this together. And then I also heard somebody say, hey, it's like a good time during a hard time. And I was like, yeah, it kind of is. And then the other idea is, I've kind of dropped some nuggets throughout like this conversation, Megan, and I'm hoping to bring that to our attendees as well, so that all the hard things I went through, I don't want them to have to do that, right? Let's evolve. Let's do the next level of, whatever challenges it is for us, but let's not keep recreating the same insanity, right? So I'm going to be sharing kind of all through the conference, kind of emceeing the whole thing. I am doing 1 hour of CE on Sunday, but just kind of sharing with people the stuff that I've learned along the way that's really helped me build my confidence, get past significant adversity, do different things with this degree, learn to have fun, learn how to actually become crazy awesome, understanding neurobiology and how this whole thing works. That's kind of what I'm hoping to do. And in that, building a stronger vet med professional so that when they leave, they're going back as a new person, as a changed person, as a better version of themselves. So I know it's kind of lofty, but that's like my dream,
Yeah. No, I love it. It's like more of a holistic approach to, we're so limited in our time sometimes to get continuing education. And so why not actually have fun, make human connections, grow better as an individual, not just our brain, but emotionally. I was telling a colleague or a couple colleagues about it. They immediately pulled up the website to look at the game and they were just loving the cards. They're like, oh my goodness, I'm buying one for everyone I know in veterinary medicine. And they looked at the conference, and even like the titles of the CE is like a non-boring lecture on da 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 da. Sometimes we take ourselves a little too seriously, and just embracing the fun and just being together as human beings. I love that idea. So I'm very excited for this event for you. Do you have a favorite card from the game?
Oh
I'm
my
really
God.
curious to know your favorite card.
I do.
I know
Okay.
this is a hard question, very unfair.
It's okay. Oh, I found it. Okay, are you ready? So my
Yes.
favorite card, and it's an answer card, is Bernie Sanders in mittens.
Oh,
But then there's also this one. I love this one. This one's great.
okay. I can't say that one out loud, but you'll just have to watch the YouTube version of that one. Ah, that is so funny. Again, I think it's just fun to cut loose, not take ourselves so seriously. And it's a really good way of just bonding with each other. I'm so excited to hear how this conference goes. Is this your inaugural conference that will
Yes,
continue?
that is the plan. So we'll see what the universe lets us do, but I've already been asked to host some of them in different parts of the country. So I would love to come back with maybe 3 events next year.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and again, small,
I
right?
think
The
it's
idea
like
is that
about 200 people. Is
yeah,
that what it was? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. The idea is to kind of like keep it small so that we can connect with each other. I'm very humble in everything that's happened so far and just really hopeful.
Before we have to leave, is there any last piece of advice that you would like to give our colleagues?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we stop putting so much pressure on ourselves to achieve, achieve, achieve. Like we are in that, there's many industries like that. We're just one of them. And you're here long enough and you just realize like what's really important and what's really not. And so it's really important to not put so much pressure on yourself to be perfect, to not be the best at everything. It's okay to be gentle with yourself. I was not taught that. I was taught to be harsh with myself every single time I messed up. It's a really important thing to be able to have any kind of longevity and joy and access your creative side within this industry because we really need creative thinkers. We have kind of dug ourselves into an interesting little hole. We need creative thinkers to come up with new solutions that will help us to practice in ways that are not only providing access to care, but also keeping us, the healers, healed, right?
Mhm.
So you're going to need to take care of yourself in order to access your creativity. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, right? This is a long game, and it's really important to have fun along the way.
Oh, I love that. Amen. All right. Your final 4 questions to wrap up is number one, what is something on your bucket list?
Ooh, this guy. Machu Picchu.
Ooh,
Yes, and
nice.
Kilimanjaro.
Oh,
I like mountains.
well, you are in Colorado. That's a good good place to be if you like mountains. Those are beautiful places. All right. Number 2, what is a simple moment of joy?
I have a hoverboard and I love, yep,
Oh,
yep.
nice.
I put these headphones on and then I play Ed Sheeran and
Ah,
I hoverboard all around my house, like spinning in circles. Like if I'm having a moment, I just get on that.
do
I'll
your
send
kids have a video? I was gonna say, do you have like video that I can put in?
I'll send you a picture.
Nice. I'll take a picture. Question number 3. If you could create one law that everyone had to follow, what would your law be?
Oh, so easy. Treat others as yourself.
The golden rule.
Mhm,
Nice. Very
mhm,
important one.
mhm.
And finally, what is something you are most grateful for?
Honestly, you want to hear a funny story?
Please.
I'm kind of thankful for the pandemic. And let me tell you why. I'm not thankful for people who got sick. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm thankful for my experience through it because it literally forced me to face fear head on, which has always kind of been like my Achilles heel, right? And then it forced us to make decisions about where we wanted to live and how we wanted to live and what was most important. And I don't think I would have done half the things that I've done in the past 2 years without that. I would have just stayed in my same rut in a different town, not where I wanted to be, not doing really what I wanted to do. And so, as terrible as it was, I'm really thankful for that experience. I used to just run away from discomfort, do whatever you can to get it to stop,
Avoid it.
right? And now I've learned enough maturity to know that oftentimes you go through temporary discomfort to reach higher levels of comfort, right? That's kind of like the entrepreneur's world. And so now when I find myself running away from something that feels uncomfortable and icky, instead I remember that. I say, this temporary discomfort is leading to higher comfort. And that's helpful in the moment, right? And that's also something I didn't have, prior to 2 years ago. So a lot of growth in this, girl.
That's good. And look at what you're doing. You've produced like multiple games for multiple industries. I know there was a teacher one, there's all sorts. And now you're putting on a event. How cool.
We're just taking it one day at a time. So life is meant to be lived. Go out and live it.
This has been the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. Whether you are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure you are subscribed to catch all these amazing people in our profession. Also, send this episode to someone you think who would appreciate it. Have a recommendation for someone who would be a good guest? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. There aren't that many Dr. Sprinkles. Until next time, Vet Lifers.